And as we record, could I ask everyone to mute their mics and take this chance to turn off your cam if you like. And otherwise, we'll be taking questions in chat. Any questions to Nate, put them in chat and I'll hand them to him when he has a few free moments to answer them. Otherwise, shall we begin, Nate?
Yeah, ready to go. So first off, I want to start with the obligatory thank you, OTJ, as well as yourself, and well, Jose, who's hosting this today, and just too many people to name that are behind the scenes putting this stuff together. So yeah, I really do appreciate the opportunity, and you know, I've been enjoying seeing the discussion in the community. I'll tell you about myself in a minute, but my teaching context is quite different from the majority of people in the group, and it's really refreshing to kind of step outside of my zone and you know, kind of see how other educators are thinking in a different kind of context, which would be the Japanese, you know, school system, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen here, and through that, I will get going. Give me one moment here. Let me get to my deck that I'm going. All right, so if you can see that, just let me know. Or if you can't see that, let me know, actually.
It's looking good.
Groovy. Just waiting for this to kind of load here. Okay, so thank you for coming, everybody. I'm happy to see that people are interested in something I'm passionate about. I'm very passionate about educational technology in particular, but G Suite for Education especially, though I am a Mac user. My devices are all Mac, believe it or not. And I was a Microsoft Ninja up until the year 2008. But yeah, just Google kind of took over the education market when it came to cloud-based learning, you know, roughly in the early, well, about 2005 from then on kind of thing. But anyway, this is an information question and answer session on G Suite for Education. But I do want to, you know, before we get going, just say like, you know, this is all about the learning. So, you know, this isn't really propagating G Suite for Education. My philosophy is, you know, find the tool that works best, whether it's Moodle or Microsoft Teams or Apple, just whatever works best for what you need, that's what you should use. And keep in mind, sometimes it's not about technology. I'm doing an activity with my grade 11s tomorrow that doesn't use the computer at all. And there's, you know, a place for that as well, right? Obviously. So let me just move along here. Just a little bit about myself. I think most people kind of know me. My name's Nate. I teach at an international school here in Nagoya. That's kind of my background. I have a background in history and political science. I teach at an IB school to secondary students, middle and high school, actually now mostly high school. But I'm also on the side an educational technology consultant. I get hired sometimes, you know, by Google, sometimes by partners for Google, you know, because I have certain certifications, which I'm going to explain to you a little bit later on. So I am what's called a Google for Education certified trainer, which sanctions me to do sessions like this, as well as train school districts and schools. I've been doing like a ton of workshops for schools in the United States in the last month in particular, which means I've been up until like, you know, 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. But I've got a few other certifications. I'm a Google Earth education expert, special team throughout the world. And I'm YouTube certified and that kind of thing. So I've spent a lot of time with the Google ecosystem. I started using Google tools in the year 2008 and started my certification journey around then. Now, the way certification goes has changed a lot since then. But anyway, we'll kind of tell you what things are, you know, what's happening with Google now, right? And before we roll, let's keep the conversation going. I think most people here see me posting an OTJ. But I'll give you this slide deck a little bit later on, but you can see my educational musings on learninglightbulbs.com, and videos I'm producing now are in social studies, or hosted on socialstudiessamurai.com and my YouTube channel, which are not just for social studies teachers. There's a lot of educational technology stuff there that any teacher can use. So let's keep chatting, and especially on Twitter. Steve McGuire will note, he's a Twitter ninja, so. Anyway, today, we're going to briefly go over the Google for Education ecosystem. I do know that quite a number of people know things about Gmail, Drive, and other apps, and you know, maybe how they work in sync, but we're going to briefly kind of go over that. Then I'm going to talk about, and I've decided to flip this actually, I'm going to talk about Google Educator groups, because the people that lead the groups are people that have the training. which is what we'll get into last. Steve McGuire on the call is actually a Google for Education Certified Innovator, which is like a level up from doing level 1 and 2 on the exams. So that's kind of what we're going to do, but a little bit flipped. I assume there's nothing in the chat right now, Jose. So basically, this is how the Google ecosystem works. And if you're on Microsoft Teams and Apple in the cloud, you probably see this kind of thing. But Google was the first to really jump onto cloud-based learning. And let's face it, they're a company, right? So, G Suite for Education is free. But they do realize if you indoctrinate entire generations, people are going to be using their products. And not only that, Google makes its money from advertising. They make something like 85 or 90% of their revenue just from advertising alone. So, when you see those YouTube videos and when you do a Google search, the top of your search usually is going to be, the most trending, trending product that has paid for advertising that's connected to your Google searches, right? Which is quite interesting, but that's how they make their money, right? Now, in terms of education, G Suite really focuses on communication and connection. So that's things like Gmail, using chat, Hangouts chat, Google Groups. The chat and the Hangouts, they work pretty similarly to any other, kind of chat that you would use. Google Meet, it's been fascinating for me to see, and I didn't write Google Meet there, that's a bit weird. Google Meet, the conversations between Meet and Zoom, there's no question Google Meet was not as well developed as Zoom, and Google's working to kind of change that, but who predicts a pandemic, right? What Google tends to do is they take an app, they put it out in its infancy, and then they get user feedback. So if you use a Google tool and you ever see down in one of the bottom left or right corners, it says send feedback, they actually do look at that data and then they improve their tools based on that. So within the people that are certified in different ways through Google, when we're talking together and, we have a chat, we always remind each other, hey, make sure you put feedback in. If somebody says, oh, which forms did this? Well, make sure you send feedback because Google actually does work on that. And Google Meet is a great example of them at the moment developing breakout rooms. Now they announced about 3 weeks ago that we're going to develop breakout rooms and a couple of other things. Zoom is definitely superior. Sorry for anybody at Google that might see this video, but it is, right? And what Google does is push something out and then they take user feedback and then they improve on the apps that they have. If you look at Google Slides, for example, and Google Sheets, they're infinitely better than they were 10 years ago. Infinitely better, to the point where I don't use PowerPoint or Keynote really anymore, which, for the first 5 years of using Google, I was finding I was using the Windows suite in connection with using Google. So Google Groups is another thing. Google Groups aren't super popular, but they are good for like those private chats for communication that don't require that face-to-face kind of thing. Now, the other big driver is content creation, and that's where you see your docs, your slides, creating data with your Google Sheets, right? Like taking data and turning it into a chart, or a graph or something like that. And of course, forms to gather data, to put in Sheets to project data visually, right? But they also work with non-Drive apps. You see that Google Earth, for example, that's what we would call a non-Drive app because you can't access it through Google Drive. For those of you that have Gmail accounts that use Google Drive, when you click on your apps launcher, you go to Drive, you'll notice that some other things are not within Drive. YouTube is an example of that. Google Earth is an example of non-Drive apps, and they're used for content creation. As an example, Google Earth, with this team that I'm on, they flew the Asia Pacific people to Australia about 3 years ago to get the, I guess, onboarding, and then they flew us to the headquarters the following year to meet with the Google Earth engineers. And at the time, there were only like 40 engineers for Google Earth worldwide. That was it. So like 40 people designing and developing Google Earth. I mean, if you can believe that. Now YouTube, among the Google ecosystem, YouTube is easily the most secretive. Even people that work in a Google office have to get explicit permission to go into YouTube. As an example, in 2015, I was doing a presentation at YouTube Space Tokyo. And for me, that was a really big deal because, I really do like YouTube a lot and I've studied it. I'm going to tell you how you can get YouTube certified in a bit. But, even the Googlers within the Google office in Tokyo had to have special permission from somebody within YouTube. And that YouTube, normally when you go to a Google office, you need permission to get in, you register early, you meet a Googler. They call people that work at Google Googlers. You meet a Googler and then they take you in. And then, with YouTube Space, you actually have to have the Googler get allowed in for, to YouTube Space. It's partly for privacy because they have little studios inside YouTube Space where their recognized major content creators can go in and they can take video and they can edit for free on really high powered equipment and that kind of thing. But that's kind of how Google works. So not every Google tool that you use, like Earth and like YouTube, is in the education sphere or part of the education ecosystem, which is for me fascinating. And then you've got these third-party developers. Pear Deck is a great example. Pear Deck, if you haven't used Pear Deck, basically it makes your Google Slides interactive, but it's an add-on. So add-ons are usually made by third-party companies or individuals that develop functionality for your Google apps, like Docs and Sheets and Slides. It just makes them work in different ways. And Pear Deck is a really popular one that, it costs you $100 a year for a subscription to Pear Deck. So they've done really, really well. And they partner with Google. So you've got those kind of things as well. And then finally, there's organization. And that's where Google Drive kind of houses all your stuff. Now, there is Google Classroom, which is an app outside of Google Drive, but I'm not going to jump into that because I figure that's going to come up in the Q&A. But organization is the other part. Like, how do I organize my classroom, through Google Drive or through a Google site? Creating your Google Docs and slides and My Maps, Jamboards and things like that within Google Drive. But how do you organize it all, right? And they have different ways to do that, which we don't have enough time to go into that stuff. I will share this deck with you later, but here just is that kind of broken down into a few different columns, right? Communication, content creation, and organization. I'm not going to go through this, but I thought I'd throw this in there from a past presentation, which has links to different trainings that you could do based on your level. And so you can look at that on your own. Not all the apps are there, but those are some of the major ones. And this is from another presentation I recently did as well, just to give you a kind of an idea of like, if you were to do short introduction activities, there are some tools you might want to use: core activities, assessment, and then review activities. My website, socialstudiessamurai.com, has tutorials on how to do most of this stuff. Shameless self-promotion there. So again, that's for you to kind of jump into. So Jose, this would be a good time for me to pause. And I've heard a little bit of pinging here. Do we have any questions in there, or?
Those are actually just people coming in, Nate. I don't actually have any questions in chat right now. You're explaining this so well that nobody is wondering anything.
Or people are waiting for, oh, what can I get out of here? Okay.
No, they're not.
So some of you may or may not have heard of Google Educator Groups. Google Educator Groups basically are communities of educators that get together and organize free professional development events. But for the sake of consistency, they do have support from Google. Now, in Google, you may have heard this before, but Google has what they call a 20% project. And they've been doing this for, decades now. Google really, ramped up its game in the mid-1990s. So they've been doing this as a company for a while, where every employee is allowed to take 20% of their time and work on their own passion project, within the company kind of thing. And so Google Educator Groups was developed by, I can't remember what her name is. I believe she's from the United States, but I had the pleasure of meeting her about 3 years ago in Singapore. And that was her brainchild, and it was a 20% project. And basically, worldwide, you've got these Google Educator Groups that are initiated, managed, and organized by educators in local areas. And it's, when I say local area, I don't mean just like one city. Tokyo, for example, myself and a few friends, we launched the first Google Educator Group in Japan in the year 2014. And we called it West Tokyo, knowing that the plan was to grow. And so now there's GEG Shinjuku, there's GEG Shinagawa, and that kind of thing. But so basically they're like OTJ. We do online, well, a range of different kind of events. We do things online. We've had park picnics. We've done one-day student voice events, lots of different kinds of, professional development events that you get through JOLT, or you would get through ETJ, and that kind of thing. But the core focus is technology and education. So that's what makes GEG kind of stand out. Everything is driven by technology. And what I feel is interesting, you know, Apple tends to be very protective and private of its trained teachers in their certification program, but Microsoft and Google are not. You'll meet a lot of people that are certified through, you know, Microsoft Innovative Educator, that's their program, and Google Certified Educator and their other certifications. You'll find a lot of people who are Apple, but a lot of people that go Google first, like myself, have a very difficult time getting into the Apple program. And the reason I'm bringing up that point is not to disparage Apple. I mean, I use their devices, which I like a lot, especially for creation and design. But GEGs have people that use a range of things. And in Google Educator groups, when we do events, it's normal to see, you know, like a session on Pages or a session on, you know, Keynote, design with Keynote and stuff like that. So it's not all about just promoting Google. It's about best practices with technology and education. You'll see themes at events like differentiation or student voice or anything under the sun, really. So it's really driven by pedagogy and methodology, not so much the technology. And the great thing about being teacher driven is that, and these teachers are volunteers, by the way, like people like Steve McGuire, who's here on the call. He's one of our leaders here in Nagoya. Congratulations, Steve. Everyone give Steve a little bit of a clap. He became an innovator last summer, Google certified the summer before, and yay, here's some clapping there. And just recently, we've got Steve onboarded as a GEG leader for Nagoya, okay? So how do you become a GEG leader? I mean, you can join a Google Educator group. They are all over the country. Japan actually is one of the most represented, one of the countries that has more GEGs than other countries in the world, believe it or not. In 2016, we had, or 2014, we had one. Now we have something like 35. But basically, it's professionals coming together to create valuable networking opportunities, professional learning opportunities. It's a great way to grow your PLN, your professional learning network. It's done a lot for me. So here's, it's kind of grainy here, but this map's a little outdated, but that's an example of how GEG is spreading from Tokyo, a little bit further north and pretty much south. And if you're curious, this is what GEGs kind of look like around the world. This map is not quite up to date. It's probably about a month old, but it just kind of goes to show how these Google Educator groups are spanning around the world. Again, we do not get paid. Those of us that volunteer to run these things, we do it as a labor of love, right? It's passion projects. Note that there are none in China. Google pulled out of China when they were, you know, all constantly being blocked on Google search. And if you're curious, these are short 1 to 2 minute videos on a few of the events that we've had in Nagoya. It gives you a sense of what our pub nights are like and what our all Japan summits kind of look like. So before I get into the training, this is going to be the last little segment before we get to the Q&A. I think this might be of interest to people, but curious if there were any questions thus far.
Nope. Sorry.
So you're about to start talking about training and certification, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think mine will wait until the end of that.
And,
okay, but interrupt me halfway through.
It's not a question, Nate. I was looking for question marks and I said nope before I actually should have. I was looking for question marks and I didn't see something from Catherine Akasaka that goes, I would also like to have a link to the slides. So the slides, I think if we make them easy to access, I think is something that everybody would appreciate.
Yep, this slide deck is already public on the web. I'll share the link when we're done. I do a lot of online training and I do find when you put the deck in there, if it's not, this is not an interactive deck. Usually when I do a virtual thing, I try to be more interactive, but as this is supposed to be a Q&A, I'm just kind of going through bad pedagogy, but I'm throwing it at you and you can stop and ask questions as we go. But yes, you will get the slide deck. And just one last thing on Google Educator groups, have a look for a GEG in your area if you're a G Suite school, or if you use Google for your own, you know, personal and or, you know, professional purposes. You might want to join a GEG and see, you know, what kind of events they have going on. Of course, these have all been online. One thing I didn't point out was that Steve and I, with some other people in GEG Nara, GEG Kyoto, and GEG Osaka City, have been doing a study group. We do this about once a year, where over the course of a couple of months, every 2 weeks, as participants use a study guide, which I'm going to show you right here for Google Certified Educator Level 1 and 2. We use a study guide to have these not info sessions, but interactive sessions every 2 weeks where we talk about what they learned, answer the questions that they have, with the purpose of, after a couple of months, being prepared to sit the exam, which is generally anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. You have 3 hours to write it. And it's a fun professional learning network building thing. Every 2 weeks, 1 hour, you get together, talk to people about the stuff you studied, and you get to know new people and you learn new tricks. And the fun thing, for this, about this for me, is that even though I've been doing this for, I'm into my 13th year doing this stuff now. And I always learn something from people that are new to Google, because, they're looking around, they're finding new things. It might be a Chrome extension, or it might be something that you can do with a Google Doc that I wasn't aware of, or might be new. I think it's fascinating. And so there's always something for people that have been doing this for a long time to learn. And that really jazzes me about this stuff. So very quickly, if you want to get certified, or if you want to do training, now this stuff is all free to do, but they are a little bit different. Now the things that you see mostly are Google Certified Educator Level 1 and Level 2. Now, basically Level 1 has 13,
Nate?
excuse me, I'm gonna examine you get certified. Yep.
Oh, there you are. No, you are. Your video stopped for a bit.
Oh, did it really?
Yes,
Huh.
it did.
Okay.
But you're cool now. You're good. Keep going.
Groovy, thank you. So basically you go through the modules, and then you can choose to write the exam. And to sit the exam, it's like $25, and you get a certificate at the end. And then you get introduced to private Facebook communities. Google Plus is gone now, but you get into Google Groups where people ask questions and help each other out and things like that. It's a really cool community, because some of the people I've had actually do Google Meets and Google Hangouts with my students, and collaborating on Flipgrid over the last, 4 or 5 years. I've often met them through my Google Certified Educator Google group, or my trainer Google group. So I'm connecting my students with people around the world through the people I've met through these programs. And to me, it's, the certification's nice to have, but bragging rights are bragging rights. Having your kids connect with other kids around the world, I mean, you can't put money on that. It's great. So then they have a trainer program where you can get certified as a trainer. Show you that in a moment. And the Innovator program, that's the one Steve did last summer, where with the Innovator program, it's unique in that you're actually on site for 3 days somewhere in the world. There's other training you can do by Google. I'm going to go through tabs and show you this stuff. And then there's YouTube certification program, YouTube Creator Academy. I put those separately because, again, YouTube is a little bit different from their education program. So let me just escape this, and let me jump into here. Now, these are all linked. So first, the communities. These are the Google Educator groups. This gives you more information if you're kind of curious. And if you're, now there you can see again, like how many Google Educator groups are in the world. You can zoom in on your own and find out, where they are specifically in Japan. Or if you want to select, you can go choose Japan, and then you can say what chapter. And so this will show you all the chapters that are here. I can see this is actually not up to date because we've got a few new ones that aren't there, like GEG Nara. But if you wanted to go to, even GEG Nagoya is not there. What's going on? Steve, we got to do something about this. And I haven't linked this, but if you Google us, gegnagoya.com, it'll give you an idea under our events tab, the kinds of things that we were doing pre-pandemic. Okay, so this is the Google Teacher Center, okay? And so if you were aiming to get certified by Google, this is where you're gonna start. Now some people think that, oh, I know Google, I use Google Apps all the time, I'll just do the exam. If you do that, there's a high chance that you're gonna waste $25 for quality. Now it is an open book exam, right? Because if you don't know an answer on the exam, you're under a time limit of 3 hours. If you don't know something, you could have a second device there and you could Google it, because that is a skill that Google expects you to have, right? But if you could do that, but if you don't prepare for the exam, I've known a lot of people that say, yeah, man, I use Google every day. I've been using it for 3 years and I failed. You do have to study for the exam. the little practices they give, there's a practical application side, and there's a multiple choice, drag and drop, you know, that kind of exam, right? Where you've got to show that you have the skills, especially the second part, which is the practical application. You have a dummy account that goes for 3 hours, and they'll get you to make a YouTube playlist. They'll get you to create Drive folders. They'll get you to create graphs from Google Sheets. So you don't want to just say, I'm going to get certified and sit and write the exam. It's not that simple. Apple Teacher, you can do, if you use Apple products, you can become an Apple teacher in about an hour or two. With Google, you can't do that. You got to put the time in. So basically what happens is, and I'll show you just for level 1, you click on this fundamentals training thing. And again, this is linked in that slide deck. I'm gonna go in with my private account here, just because it's easier. And the interface that you're gonna see are these different units that you're gonna study. Now you can see I always study when I recertify. You have to recertify every 3 years. And basically what happens is, let's go with have a mostly paperless classroom. So you tap on that, and then you go through just a background of what's in the unit, and of course links to learning how to do certain things. But then you have these very specific tasks, I guess, and scenarios and things like that, where you learn a little bit about how the Google mindset works. And then you have these videos from educators that use G Suite for Education. You'll have little pop-up information boxes and things like that. And so you go through all of these, and then at the end of each part, you've got this little check your knowledge. These aren't worth anything. They don't, I guess, relate to your exam. If you do take the exam, you don't have to do any of this. This is just to get you prepared. If you're confident, you can sit down and write the exam. You could go straight to writing the exam. But I do recommend that people do this. I do this for myself every time we do a new study group, because I need to remember, you know, what was on the exam last year, you know? So that is GCE, Google Certified Educator. Let me just pop over here. Right now, if you scroll down here, here's a different one called Certified Innovator. Now, what being a certified innovator is, it's the most of the commitment, actually. So after you've become level 1 and level 2, you can become what's called an innovator. So Steve's journey, for example, he did level 1, then he did the level 2 exam. And then I remember, you know, saying, hey man, like there's the first ever Innovator Academy in Japan in, you know, summer 2019. Why don't you apply? So what he did was come up with a problem. He had to seek a problem at his university. And he was interviewing other teachers to figure out, okay, what is a need at the school? And then he came up with an idea for a project, not a solution, but an idea. But a problem. And then not an idea to solve it, but an idea to approach it. And then at the Google office in Tokyo for 3 days, Steve worked with people like myself who are innovator coaches. And he was iterating many times his idea, and he was creating prototypes and things like that. And then for 1 year, you know, Steve and the other cohort, there were 36 people in the cohort. And they, you know, would check in from time to time with their coaches over the course of the year, developing their project, and in the course of the year, trying to find solutions to deal with that problem. So for me, the Innovator program is definitely the best out of all of them, but you have to be level 1 and level 2 to actually even apply. You've got to create a video, you have to do the interview, you have to do like the interview with somebody in your educational context. So there is a commitment, and not only for those 3 days, not only for the application before that, but, you know, for a whole year after. In September, we're doing an online, you know, showcase of what people were doing for the last year. And then you have to maintain that. I've been an innovator for 7 years now. And every year I update, you know, what I'm doing with my project, right? Which was, you know, creating content and a blog and that kind of thing. Not very creative, but back then they didn't quite demand it. It was a different system. So the last one where well, there's, again, other certifications in that. The last one's a trainer. For those people out there that are quite good with different platforms, you know, if you're doing Moodle and you know Microsoft and you know Google and all that, you know, if you train teachers in how to use educational technology, you might want to become a trainer. Now, remember, you do have to get level 1 and level 2 before you can apply for this. But, you know, you put together a training resume. You do have to take a special trainer exam. and you have to create a video that's 3 minutes long with a sample of you doing, you know, a training, a screencast training. And this, all of this stuff opens you up to different groups of people. Your email inbox gets really cluttered, to be quite honest with you. I get them from the training, you know, the trainer group and the innovator group and GCE group and my Google Earth group and a few other groups I'm a part of. But those are all people that I can reach out to when I don't know the answer to something I'm looking for. And even my colleagues, you know, somebody doesn't know how to do something, I just go into the trainer community. If I don't get it there, I go into the other communities, and somebody always has an answer. So if you want to be, you know, somebody that is a leader in educational technology, you can do this. But if you just want to get better at being a user of educational technology in your class with solid pedagogy, right? It's not about the tool, it's about the kid or the student and the learning. Then I encourage you, you know, give a look at level 1 and level 2. There's G Suite certification here. That's for, you know, like university students. But there are other trainings that you can do, which is in that same tab. If you were to click on training, I don't know why I opened all these tabs, but so the Google Teacher Center, if you decided to Google that right now, they do have a new one, but I'm going to go with the old site for now. Under the training tab, if you go down, you see those two things that I just kind of showed you, but they also have this series of videos called The First Day of Google. And so we'll go with Classroom because I've had a lot of questions about Google Classroom. They have these nice bite-sized chunks of videos that you know, teach you how to use the different tools. So, you know, these are things that you can use to teach yourself how to use certain apps. If you don't want to, you know, do the certification, there are still places for you to go where you can learn. And they've got these for slides and forms and things like that. Now, what I really want to highlight, which a lot of people don't know about, you know, outside of the training community and you know, that kind of thing, the innovator community, is that they have these other programs that you can take where you'll get a certificate, but you don't really get certified for anything. But they give you Chromebooks training, tablet training. Computer Science First is another one that I'll pull up in a moment to show you. Applied Digital Skills, digital citizenship and safety courses, something for people in this community, maybe diverse learners and support for English language learners. So you can go in and you can do that training. And of course, you know, Google, it's a company, this is their business. So, you know, what they do is connect this to all of their products, right? But again, you might get some ideas in there that you can use in your own practice in terms of, you know, how you use technology for teaching and learning, right? Which is what I'm into. So let me just show a few. There's a very new one. It's called, for those of you that coach, you know, teachers on how to use educational technology, they have a new certified coach program. Again, you have to have level 1 and level 2. And this one is a long process. I don't even know if I qualify to do it. I'm not a technology coach. That's who it's designed for. People who do educational technology training for their institutions exclusively, but they do have some loopholes. I'm training our entire faculty in G Suite from September. So I think I can squeeze in there, but you know, you have to log 100 hours of training. We have something called the EDU activity app. So Steve, as an innovator, has to log his activity. As a GEG leader, he and I both have to log our activity. You have to do this, and for certified coaching, you've got to log 100 hours. So that's pretty deep. That's just for information. Let's see. Okay, I've already pulled that up. Want to show a few others. If you look at the resources tab in the Teacher Center, you can see other things like there's resources for Google Earth Education. Another shameless plug, one of my Earth projects I use is actually highlighted on their education page. I was pretty surprised and flattered to see that. But they have some other ones like Be Internet Awesome. That's about kids and digital citizenship. Applied Digital Skills, which I brought up here, I think. Yeah, so if you go to Applied Digital Skills, for example, if you tap on lessons, they've got all these different lessons that have been developed. So digital art and games, you know, maybe there's some stuff in there for people teaching elementary students. Let's see, back to school, you might get some ideas there. Arts and culture through the Google Arts and Culture Center. I use this because I'm a social studies subject area teacher, right? So they have, like, you know, a number of different lessons. They say recommended time, like, you know, 30 minutes, 1 hour, or whatever. They're already integrated with tools. They've got templates that you can download. So it's a place where you might go to get some ideas. So I recommend that you scroll through the Applied Digital Skills and then look at the lessons tab. Again, this is what Be Internet Awesome looks like. You might want to direct, after you look at it, and if you agree with what's on here, direct families to it. You know, there's the tab for educators. You can do this on your own. I won't go into it, but this is all about digital citizenship and how to protect yourself, how to deal with cyberbullying and things like that. And Google, remember, you know, it's a company, right? And it's a business. So they go to outside experts in these areas. They don't just say, this is what we think about digital citizenship. They consult, and they have Google partners all over the world that, you know, so they can take the best pedagogy and put it into what they're developing. Let's see, computer science first. This is all about coding, and they've got free online resources and curriculum for you to teach coding. And hey, you can teach coding to kids that are like, you know, 4 and 5 years old. And that is the future, right? We're going down the road of AI. So, and lastly, we've got sustainability. If you were to go to this one, click on Let's Get Started. And these are some activities in here that you could have, you know, students do, right? Like energy. How is my energy consumption? You know, so these are more activities. But anyway, I'm not going to go through this. I just wanted to show you to kind of encourage you that there are these things out there that you can use with Google. Now, not part of the education ecosystem. And lastly, and we'll jump into the Q&A in a minute, is the YouTube certified program. When I see, for example, Dave Juteau and Jose, you know, they've got a YouTube channel they're developing with, you know, their discussions with educators. That's the kind of thing I can see taking off, you know, if the branding is there, if the promotion is there. You know, I thank you for having me as a guest one day. I found it really an engaging conversation, and other conversations I've gone through a couple of them with clips and phrases when I've had time. I can see that taking off. And so YouTube has what's called the YouTube Creator Academy. Now this is a certified program. You can go through this and have a look. If you have any questions, kind of ask me what it's about. And that's linked to the slide deck as well. And if you go to the YouTube Creator Academy, you can either go to the landing page and click through and have a look at some things, or if you go to the catalog. Now, these are all free online lessons. They've got videos made by real YouTubers that were just like you and me. The one thing that YouTubers commonly say, which I've noticed in these study guides, in their videos, they say, just start, and then build an audience and then improve as you go. You know, I waited 2 years before my social studies samurai started, you know, where I started pushing it out, which was, not until the spring of this year. They say, just do it, just get out there and do it. But, you know, you learn about how you brand and how you make money if you that's one of your goals. But also how to, create better videos when you don't have a studio. And in fact, if you do a search, I mean, if you scroll down, like, if you're a musician, they've got things for teachers, they've got things for musicians. If you're doing a cooking YouTube channel, I think a YouTube channel is a really great way to develop your own content that you can use year after year, help your students learn at their own pace. And if you do well enough, I mean, you might make money. I got a friend up in Tokyo. I mean, he's got 30,000 subscribers. He makes money from YouTube. I have another friend in Bangkok. He has 140,000 subscribers. He quadrupled his subscribers because of COVID. He didn't plan that. He's making good money. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I believe that's it. But before I do, I'm just going to remind you, keep the conversation going, get in touch. Let me get the link here, and I'm going to post it in the chat. And feel free to make a copy of that, though it's not going to change.
Okay.
Okay, I see Steve there.
Would you mind if I added that to the otj.wisecad.net website and connect it to your presentation?
It's public on the web. You can do whatever you want with it. Yep. Thank you for asking. But yep, anything I put out publicly, I expect people are going to take. I will say, though, folks, it really does irritate me when somebody takes one of my slide decks I've spent hours and hours on animated GIFs making, and they say to me, when I say, oh, I've got a slide deck I worked on if you want to use it, and then they say, no, I've got my own, and then they send a link to my own slide deck, and I say, that's not your own, dude. That happened to me a couple of months ago, and I was not impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, you were dealing with a very unimpressive person, obviously. We have a few questions, Nate.
Great.
And I got to let Alex back in. Okay. So a lot of them, actually, Steve McGuire eventually answered quite a few of them, but I'll rain them down on you. And the people who I mentioned, feel free to open up your camera and your microphone to ask Nate a follow-up question. So from Matthew Jenkins, I've heard that last name before. Very interesting so far. Enjoying this. I suppose that means I am.
Thank you, Matthew.
Interested in forms and connecting it to Gradebook if time permits.
Connecting forms to Gradebook, do you mean Google Sheets or?
Matt, are you there? Matthew is maybe not there, or maybe he stepped up to, but there are other questions, so keep that in mind. Or is he? No, he's not. Okay, from Kevin.
Well, yeah, he's actually, he's just, but Google, you know, in Google Classroom, they've got, you know, when you collect, if you create a form within Google Classroom that you've sent to students, you're going to get your responses in a spreadsheet. And if you use the rubric, you're going to get response, like when you insert grades, you can export that stuff into Google Sheets. Now, the problem is it doesn't seamlessly move from your Google Classroom spreadsheet, you know, with your quizzes and your rubric scores and all that, into a separate Google Sheet. If you do everything within Classroom, it should all go to the one sheet, and then you can export. But remember, you can just copy and paste from another Google Sheet. Let's say you made, you know, a form from, you know, outside of Google Classroom. You can just kind of copy and paste that in. It's an extra step. It's a pain in the butt, but that's, you know, a quick workaround. But if you work solely in Classroom, everything should go to that Google Sheet.
Matt, you're
Yeah,
not
so
there.
what was Google Classroom? That's what I thought. Your Gradebook in Google Classroom is what Matthew was talking about. So yeah, the form should go. Yeah.
Yeah, look, that was a great answer. Thank you. And I am on Google Classroom. Just one question: does the level 1 certification that you sort of changed my questions when you told me about all of that interesting stuff? Do they cover stuff like how to use Google Forms on Google Classroom and integrate that with the Gradebook in Google Classroom?
Yeah, in some instances, yes. Now, it goes deeper into Classroom on level 2. Level 1 is pretty, that's why they call it fundamentals training. And then level 2 is called advanced training.
Sure.
So, you know, if you wanted, you could just go through the units in level 2. I mean, you could very quickly look at, I would recommend, like, if you're already using Google Classroom, you might want to just jump into level 2 and go through the units there. But again, like if you look at first day of Google Classroom, look in there and you might find answers to the questions to that, you know, those video series that they have with slides and Classroom and that kind of thing. That would be my recommendation. If you want to get certified, then I'd say go level 1 and then do level 2, and you know.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Can I just ask one last question, and then I'll hand off to someone else? To go right through the units of level 1 certification, obviously it depends on how much you know and so on. And Steve was already mentioning that. For a total beginner, how much time investment would you actually be looking at?
You know, that's a great question. And I do get that question a lot. When you go through the units, they have a recommended time, like 60 minutes, 30 minutes, you know, for each section of each unit. My feeling is, now I'm very anal retentive, and what I do is on paper, I take notes and I use them when I'm writing the exam, you know, because when, you know, again, I've been using Google for a long time now, right? And when there's something I'm not quite sure about, you know, I can, oh yeah, I need to remember that. So I recommend you take notes as you do it, which means the amount of time they recommend really depends on who you are. In the certification units and the study guides, they'll have little sections where they'll say, jot down your ideas about this. You know, so you've got students that you want to communicate with. Write down some of the methods you might use. I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. You know, chat, Gmail, Hangouts, Meet. You know, I already know that, so I'm not going to take my time writing that, you know. But I do take time writing other things down and taking notes. So it really depends on who you are. That's probably the best answer I can give. It depends on who you are. You could probably get level 1 studied in about 10 to 15 hours, especially if you're using Google already.
Excellent. No, that's more than enough information. Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. Thanks for coming today.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll still be listening on, but thank you.
Okay, Nate, we have a few other things. I'll try to go over them really quickly. A couple of people made some specific requests on these topics. Jamboard. Somebody would like you to cover Jamboard.
Okay.
Somebody else, Bill Pello, was asking about on Google Classroom and Gradebook. I'll get to that in a second. And other people wanted to just ask Google Suite overall, the best way to learn the basics. And to get to Bill Pello's question, which is the most specific of them, what is the max limit on Google Classroom Gradebook to download the CSV file? I don't know what the means. I had one that just would not download. Timeout every time. Tried different browsers, different computers, about 40 assignments for close to 40 students. Other classes could be downloaded easily. Bill, want to crank up your camera? Maybe you'd be ready to do a follow-up, but Nate.
Geez, Bill, I've never heard of that before. When I have something like that,
that is a
the CSV file, right?
common word.
It's an article, right? I don't know why you're having trouble with the CSV file.
Because there was no prior. Okay, I could explain but that's okay. Yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
I'm just being a jerk. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jose. If you have the grade book, you know that you can click it, and then there is a CSV file that comes down. So it's the CSV file that is associated with your particular course.
The CSV file that is associated with your product. Okay, got it.
Right.
So,
Sorry.
so the comma separated values file, right? I don't know why that would happen. Have you tried to open the sheet within that, and then maybe copy it and paste it into another sheet and then download that? I've never heard of that before.
No, when you copy it, it's style sheets. It's not an actual spreadsheet, so it doesn't come in grids.
Okay, I'm not going to
Right.
pretend that I know the answer to that, but what you could do, if you could fire your question with detail in the event page, and what I'll do is try to find out from somebody who knows a little bit more than me about sheets and how what that problem is.
Okay, because I didn't know if I could like delete a couple of the quizzes and then be able to do it, or what the limit was.
Yeah, it shouldn't be the problem. I've never heard of limits, and you just said 40 people. That shouldn't be a 40.
Yeah.
You can get like up to 3,000 rows in a spreadsheet, right? Something like that, I
Right.
believe. So, yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Give me some detail. I'll try to find out.
Okay, let's change tack because we're now on basically close to the open floor mode of this part of the presentation. So if people can open up their cameras and get ready to open up their mics, I'm going to invite you to raise your hands virtually by pushing the raise hand button in the participants list and start chucking questions at Nate. And then that way it doesn't take as much time to actually type stuff up, and we can be a little bit more friendly when we can see each other.
Yep. Somebody had asked about Jamboard. Do y'all want to just play with Jamboard? It'll take us 5 minutes.
Yes.
That's a very popular. That's a very popular topic. I can tell because Melody wants to see it.
Okay. So I think I'm going to pull out my my iPad as well then, since we're here. Now, interesting thing, like as I was saying earlier, how Google will put out a new app, and then they'll develop it over time based on user feedback. Now, obviously, they have some ideas for how they're going to develop it, but they want to get people to know it first, and then they start, making it better. And literally last week, just after, like 2 weeks after I got a Jamboard tutorial video made, they added 2 new features. And I'm just like, I mean, which means I'll make another video at some point in time. I'm not going to do that now, but I'm going to share my screen so that you can see where I'm going to get this done here. Just tap out. How are we doing? You can see that, Jose?
Yep.
You're good.
Right. Wonderful. Good. So now what you can do, you can either just go straight to Drive if you want, or usually what Google can do is like google.jamboard.com. Usually it's like sites.new or jamboard.new, that kind of thing. So maybe with Jamboard, you can't do this, but with most Google tools, you can do that. Let's go with jamboard.new. No, it's not allowing me. So what I'm going to do is go to Jamboard from here. So I'm going to go to, you got to play with these things, right? If you go to sites.new or docs.new, it'll kind of come up. So in Drive, for those that might not be sure, I went a little quickly there. So in Gmail, if you were to tap on your apps launcher and go to Drive, you can click on that and it's going to open up a new tab with this, and then your new button right over here, right? You tap on that, you tap on that, and then you go down to more and just also allow it to open. And you're going to scroll down to the
Ooh,
bottom.
there it
Let's
is.
see, not quite the bottom. Yeah, and then tap on Jamboard. Now I will say, Jamboard works differently within a browser and within an app. I can throw some links. I did tutorial videos on this, like I said, a couple of weeks ago. Now the tablet version is a little bit different from the browser version. It works better with a stylus and that kind of thing. Now, what I'm going to first do is go up here and I'm going to click share. Now you can see this is private only to me, but we want to play together, right? You always learn from from playing, right? So I'm going to go down here. Now, if you were in a school, you would probably just keep it with your students, and where it had names, you can invite them. I'm going to copy the link and I'm going to change this from viewer to editor. All right. Sorry, I gotta kind of zoom. There we go. Hold on one second. I'm getting mouse over stuff here. Okay, so I've made people an editor. I've copied the link. I'm going to click done. And let me just put this in the chat here. Okay, so please feel free to jump in that. And as we go, you can put in things now. They have sticky notes here, but one of the new features is now a text box. You can actually tap on that. You can create a text box and add text. You couldn't do that up until 2 weeks ago. Now I'm always forgetting. I'm going to go into Jamboard here. I'm going to play with my stylus. Let me just see that. Yeah, I got to get out of that account into this account.
I wrote my name. Ha ha ha.
So what you can do too, you can add images. So if I tap on add an image, I can search. I know you're not looking for this, but play around with it. If you tap the image icon, you can say, I mean, puppies are cool. Who doesn't like puppies, right? So there's a cute little fart right there. I'll take that. Just wait for that to load. I'm going to resize it a little bit. I'm even going to get a little bit playful, right? And you can add sticky notes, which, you can see people are adding sticky notes there. And again, these sticky notes, I'm going to go into somebody's sticky note here. I'm going to tilt it a little bit. Buy milk for the puppies. What is new is, let's see, these shapes you could not get. So now you can put in arrows and triangles and circles. They didn't have that before. So now the thing is, changing colors and things like that, right? You can't really do a lot with Jamboard just yet, right? You can change order in that. I can bring this to the front. So if I want that on top of the puppy kind of deal, or if I want the puppy to be on top, double click. And then you have your ellipses. Google has these 3 dots, the ellipses, which people can kind of mess around with. You have a pointer. So if you actually have students presenting something they've made on Jamboard, they can kind of circle and it just disappears, focuses attention. Somebody's changing the background. I can see that. If you want to look at what I'm doing or follow along by listening, at the top where you see one, pardon me? Yeah.
Melody's been reading too much 50 Shades of Grey.
No, it's Outlander.
Whatever.
Okay, I'll delete it.
At the top, if you tap that little shark tooth down arrow, that's where you can go in and you can start duplicating slides, or you can add slides in specific places. So it's not a highly advanced tool, but it is a good tool. Now, you can only use 20 frames. Now, we don't call these slides in Jamboard, we call them frames. But, there's different ways you can use it. In fact, I'll go to my website and show you on Jamboard, I made 15 different templates that people can download. But if I can go to a separate frame, I'm going to frame number 5. Could everybody go there and just not touch it, please?
I'll go there and touch it.
Just don't touch it. Now, there is something I want to show you. Now, I'm on my iPad right now. Great, somebody touched it, but that's okay.
Told you.
Now, if you now
Adam.
on Jamboard, on Jamboard, now, if you're on a browser right now, then you're not going to be able to do what I'm about to do. If you're on an iPad, you will, or on a tablet. So in the top here in your browser where you get the pen, button, the pen marker, if you're on a tablet or an iPad, you get these assistive drawing tools. So for example, I'm going to take the text drawing tool and I'm going to write hello and watch what happens here. Right?
Oh, there's
So
your head.
it fixes my text for me.
Nice.
There's another one where when you draw a shape, I don't draw shapes very well. Maybe I want to draw a star.
Ooh.
Sorry,
Okay,
Nate, right
and
now,
it's not gonna fix the star for me. But anyway, but the shapes work like anything else. If you were to pinch actually, and you're on a tablet, and if you're on a tablet, you're gonna see that the trash can, you can actually pinch and drag stuff. In fact, I'm gonna drag my star. Oh, I can't do it because it's not a closed shape. Anyway, I'm going to drag that circle and it's just gone in the trash. I just did that with my fingers. Now, there's one more thing that is assistive drawing as well. If I want to, and maybe I should have used this when I was drawing my star. Yeah, this is the one I should have used when I was drawing my star. So what that's going to do is kind of have a look. And at the bottom, I get all these options and I'm going to tap on one. See how quickly that turned it into a star shape. Great for little kids, right?
Ooh.
So I drew that with my fingers and then I had a list of options at the bottom and I tapped the one that I liked the most. If I want, I can change it. I'm not even redrawing. I'm just changing it to the one that I like right now. And that's, let's see, I like that one the most. I click my little green thing and there you go. So, that's Jamboard really. I mean, so what, 5 minutes, not even 10 minutes?
Nate.
There you go.
If I
Yep.
if I can just add on that,
Yep.
actually, Google is funding AutoDraw, and AutoDraw
AutoDraw is great.
actually, yeah, AutoDraw actually will probably have that feature in the future. But if you're on a browser, I put the link. AutoDraw, you can on a browser, you can try to draw something, and it'll say like, "Are you trying to draw this?" And it'll give you images, the same thing, but on a browser.
Yep, that's right. And you know what? There's another one too. Let me throw this in. Tell you what, folks, have a look at my screen. Here's a fun one that you can do with your students, just very quickly at the beginning of class, waiting for people, so you may have seen this, maybe not. Google Quick Draw, have you seen this before?
Quick Draw. That was Apple's old name for some proprietary software back in the.
Which slide are we on? Are we still on
It's not
5?
a slide. I'm sharing my screen, so you just want to kind of look at my screen.
Oh,
Yeah, we're not on a frame in Jamboard now. In fact, I'm going to close Jamboard. Hope you enjoyed that. But
yeah, that was fun. Thank you.
hey, all good. In fact, I'm going to throw this in the chat here. It's called Quick Draw, but just kind of let me do a quick demo here. This is quite fun.
Oh,
Kids
okay.
do like this.
Here we are.
This was great there was a little boy outside my classroom in like grade 3 and he was crying, for whatever. And he's like, oh, this and that. He's like, I want to stay here. I'm like, yeah, that's okay. And I didn't want him sitting there like, I wanted to calm him down. Right. And I said, hey, do you know Quick Draw? Do you like to draw? He's like, sniffling. Yeah. And I pulled out my computer and I put it down. It was great. He sat here and played with it for like, 10 minutes and his sister kind of came along. But it's a fun little thing. So, all right, draw a blueberry in under 20 seconds. Got it. So now I have to draw a blueberry.
I see circle or move. Oh, I know. It's blueberry.
That was a
Bathtub.
blueberry.
Oh, isn't that fun?
Bread or meat or screwdriver or steak. I see shoe or sleeping bag.
What? No! It's
Shoe.
a bathtub. It's a bathtub.
It looks like a fat wiener dog.
I think I got it. Isn't it the U.S.? No.
It's all right. So anyway, that's the idea. It's kind of fun, right? And since I've got you right now, if you're having a look at my screen, I'm going to show you where you can get some activities. This is my website I'm developing. I won't get into the website because that's not the purpose of today, but I do have some 360-degree videos. I'm trying to put in a package that teachers can use to learn Japanese history on YouTube in 5-minute videos, scrolling around in 360 degrees. But anyway, if you go to Tech in Class, and you can kind of choose, recently I posted one on HyperDocs, but Google Jamboard, if you tap on that under the Tech in Class tab, this is a work in progress, by the way. The iPad version is up to date, but the browser version is a little bit, it's got that text feature now. But if you go here, you can see some different examples of how people might want to use Jamboard in the class. I'm going to show one that I'm going to be using with my students. This is a discussion prompt, and what I've done you know, Jamboard, I think even simple tools have their place, right? So with my grade 9 students, we're going to be talking about racial justice, right? And so what I did was, what's one way to improve social and racial justice, right? And I'm going to assign each student in the class a number, right? I think I've got like 21 kids in the class. So I'm going to say, you're number 1, you're number 2, you're number 3. And all they have to do is go in, they're going to tap on one, and then they're going to write their idea. It's completely anonymous with a very difficult subject. And, you know, so here's one way of using Jamboard. So, you know, if you like that idea and you have students that are old enough to do it, then all you have to do is tap here on the template and click make a copy, and then you've got a copy with whatever Gmail account you're using. So anyway, I'm not going to go through that shameless self-promotion here, but there are some other things that you might get ideas from, like Google Drawings, activities you can use with students. So I've got some Google Earth tours, like the story of Christmas, the history of St. Patrick's Day, stuff like that.
Nate, we have a couple of hands up.
Groovy.
Adam, go.
Okay, so probably more appropriate for way back when you were talking about certification.
That's okay. Sorry about that.
But I was wondering, does the Google certification have any references to, say, the DigComp.edu European Framework certification or anything like that?
I haven't gone through level 2 right now, like this summer. By right now, that's what I mean. But no, they don't get into like, you know, what's the COPPA laws, which are new for YouTube, right? For children, they came out in January. So in the certification, you do not really get that stuff addressed, like, you know, laws in Europe and that kind of thing. So you have to study that on your own for your own learning, but that's not going to pop up in the exam. And it's probably because the exam is supposed to be geared towards a global audience. They had a huge push about 2 years ago to translate the exam into multiple languages. So it really was only English and English, I think Spanish, and can't remember what else. But anyway, so no, you're not going to see that on the exams.
No, I wasn't talking about laws or things like that so much as the Digital Compass Educators, the European Framework for Digital Competence of Educators.
I've not seen
like
that before.
CEFA for digital educators.
Can you share me a link and I have a look? I've not. Okay, I thought you were talking about something else here, but
It's in the chat, Nate.
yeah, pulling it up right now here. Maybe you can throw out another question. I'm going to quickly look at this. But I can throw this in the chat. But
it on was you were talking about it, not just actually focusing on training and certification for using Google tools, but using them with good pedagogy. So I was just wondering how that how the pedagogy side of it comes into the training.
Okay, yeah, no, they probably, my guess is, spent more time looking at Common Core, you know, because it is an American company. But yeah, that's an interesting question. I do know that they go to professional educators and they, try to find out, hey, how do you teach this? They go to the people that do like travel the globe doing workshops and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I thought you were talking about something else with that, but yeah, they get experts to come in and they consult, and that kind of thing. But specific names, specific organizations, I don't know. You're not going to find that on the website. You're making me curious though.
Okay,
who's got time?
Just before we go to the next question, I just want to remind everyone that if you put your hand up by pushing the raise hand button in the participants list, I can see you. I can see where you are in the procession of people who are asking questions. So, Melody, you're next.
My question was answered. Sorry.
I think somebody was trying to raise their hand, but they were kind of double clicking. So they kept raising.
How do I unraise it? Just click on it, or?
Yeah, the raise hand button will turn into a lower hand button.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So,
John, I replied to your thing with a link to the web there. So there's those things that you can download and templates there. That's right. That's a great cat.
Okay.
Yes.
Adam, did you want to? Were you trying to say something else, or?
No, that flashing was just me making a flash so people could see this is what you're talking about.
Oh, all righty. Okay. So, Nate, there were also other questions about maybe just a really quick tour about what G Suite, like the really basic stuff like docs and sheets for raw beginners. And there are a couple of raw beginners, and maybe at a slightly slower pace than we're used to tonight, because we're talking about raw beginners here.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. And feel free to interrupt. And if people have, you know, suggestions, you know, and that kind of thing, go, you know, feel
Yep.
free. All right, let me just share my screen here. See Jose's handsome face there.
Oh, thank you. Especially too, I think a lot of people
Where'd
are
I go?
interested in how they can get this to help their ERT situation coming up in
Right, right. Okay, well, those actually, yeah, okay, there's a lot right there. I mean, it's like the reason why, you know, some of us refer to Google as an ecosystem. Sometimes you'll hear the Google universe, you know, because there really is a lot of stuff, right? So basically, you don't necessarily have to log in through Gmail, but I always check my mail. So when you go into Gmail, up here, there's different ways to log in, but this is probably the more common way. In the top, you get this little, some people call it the waffle, right? It's called your apps launcher, okay? Now, I'm not going to get into Gmail and stuff like that. There's a million different things you can do with Gmail. But if you tap on your apps launcher, note here, we've got Google Drive, and within Google Drive, you have a number of apps. Now, some of those apps you can access in your apps launcher, but you know, most people tend just to go to Drive. But when you look here at your apps launcher, you've got things like Google Search, right? That's just a Google Search landing page. And that's, you know, skills that you can teach your students are how to do a proper search, you know, using Google. I don't buy into just Google it. You know, we should be using academic articles and journals and newspapers and books and you name it, right? I discourage kids from just Googling it. Unless, you know, maybe they're going to Google Scholar, for example, or Google News. Depends on what you're teaching, right? And Google Search is highlighted in the certification level 1 and level 2, right? Google Meet, that's, you know, your video chatting, and it's not nearly as good as Zoom. It's getting better, but depending on what you want to do, like if you love breakout rooms, then yeah, definitely Zoom is the way to go. If you have the choice, I do not. My breakout rooms, when I was using them in classes, I had to make a whole bunch of different calendar invitations, right? Again, in terms of communication, you've got Google Calendar where you set up meetings with people and things like that. You can invite specific people. You can link documents and files and Google Drive things that you've built, like an agenda document to it. I'm sorry, I'm just explaining this. It's just too much to go through and show each little thing. You know, anybody that uses Google will attest to that. So down here, as I scroll down, you can see some of the Drive apps are here, Docs, Sheets, Slides. But you have other things too. Jamboard is part of the Drive ecosphere, if you will. But you've got Google Classroom, which is a separate app. You've got Google Earth, which is a separate app. Blogger, which is separate. And the Arts and Culture Center, right? Among other things. So your day-to-day use as a classroom teacher would probably include using Google Drive to make stuff for your students to use, and then Google Classroom, where you're going to share that with your students and instantly make copies for each individual student. So let's say, for example, you make an essay. What you would do is, you know, your students have to write an essay. I've got students working on one actually now. Or they're going to be. We started talking about it today. First day of school, grade 12. Okay, we got an essay you're doing. They love that. So let's say I create a Google Doc and it's an essay, right? Let me see if I have a doc here just for the sake of argument. You know, Canada rocks, Togo. Oh, let's go to Black Death. Yeah, Black Death is cool. All right, so let's say I want students to, in fact, you know what? I'm actually just gonna open up a new doc. Blank document. And I'll use this one thing as an example here. So I'm going to say essay template. I can't type. I can spell honest. I just can't type. Oh, for goodness sake, you get it. You get the idea, right? So what I would do is put the title here. Now in Google Classroom, when your students join, every document you share with them and make a copy for them, their name automatically goes into it. So this essay template would actually, it would say like ICO-essay template. It would automatically generate that depending on whatever the name of the student is in your classroom, right? So I would just create an essay template. I would say, hold on one sec there, sorry, title, and then I'd say, write your essay here, bibliography here. And again, I told you I can't type. And so what I would do is now going back to the Google ecosystem, right? So I've made this is the template I want them to use. Then I'm going to go back into Google Classroom, and I'm going to after I've made my class in Classroom, I'm going to upload that doc as an assignment to my students. And I'm going to make a single copy for every single student in the class. And then that's what I'm going to grade. In Classroom, I can make a rubric for it. So then I have private communication with the student as they build their essay using that Google Doc. So as long as they continue to faithfully use that Google Doc, I can go in at any time, offer comments, offer feedback. I don't have to give a grade until I really want to. And they click turn in when they're done, and then I can grade it. And then it goes into a grade book in your Google Classroom. Now, all the other things like slides and sheets and Google Earth and My Maps, you can build other stuff that you can share with students in Classroom, or even if you don't use Google Classroom, you can share that with them. They can make their own copies. You can make it a collaborative document like a slides deck. I noticed in the chat, Steve, what I showed you on Google Jamboard, Steve said, yeah, I did that with slides. And I used to do that with slides until Google Jamboard came out. But when I used it with Classroom in the past, I'd say, here's a Google Slides slide deck. And I would share it with the class and allow everybody to edit it, but I didn't make a copy for everyone. I wanted it to be a document that we just work on together. So I made everyone an editor, but I didn't make a copy for everyone. So it was just a 15-minute class activity. So I do that with docs and slides and other things. So I don't want to get too much into it because it really is like a lot to talk about. Google Forms you would use to create quizzes or maybe check-ins with your students, see how they're doing. Maybe if you're giving an oral presentation, if you make your rubric on a Google form with the numbers, right, then as they're doing the presentation, or at least as you watch the presentation, if you filmed it, then you can just type in the Google form and then hit submit, and you're the only one that gets the form. You're just using the form as a rubric, and you're typing all your feedback and your comments in that in a Google form, and then you get it in a spreadsheet, right?
Nate, there was just one question so far.
Great.
Is there any way to make copies for students without Google Classroom?
To do that is a pain in the butt. Well, it is and it isn't. The easiest way to do it, if you want your students, okay, now, for example, if I go back here, right? So which one's a better template, right? So here is a sample of a Jamboard infographic, right? Or actually, yeah, this isn't the best, but anyway. So let me go to a different one. Actually, it's better to let me give you Google Drawings is probably got better examples here. So I want you to notice. Let's see if I go to this anticipation guide. Okay. So I want you to focus at the top in the URL where it says /edit, right? So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go to a different, actually, I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to go back to my essay template. Anything in Google that you've made, if I take this and at the end of it, delete, edit, and write the word copy and hit enter, and I share this URL with them. So I copy that URL and I email it to my students and I say, make a copy of this. Then when they're logged into Gmail, their account, then they have to click this to make a copy. So you know what it's like if you tell students like, all right, I want you to go to this and I want you to make a copy. If you do it that way, then basically it forces them to make a copy and they're not messing up the version that you have, right? What I've seen people do in the past is they go up here, they click share, and sorry, I'm going to close that because it's taking a bit to load there. Still haven't got my cable. They're getting people, they're sharing the document with them as editors. Let me, I don't know why that's going, but, or what they're doing is getting students to go up and click file and make a copy. The easiest way is just to take the word edit out, /copy, and then email that link to them. And then they have to click make a copy. Let me just zoom in on that for you. They have to click make a copy. So if you're not using Google Classroom, you can do that with slides and sheets and docs and drawings and, you name it. If it's got that, /edit at the end, then they should be able to copy it. That was a lengthy explanation, but.
Okay, and we have another hand up. Linda, if you want to crank on your camera and you can ask directly.
My cat just got up here. Um, I had a problem with Google Classroom that I wasn't aware of until just at the last minute. My students were not submitting their assignments to Google Classroom. They were just sharing them to my Google Drive,
Right.
which I wasn't even aware that I had a Google Drive. I wasn't using it. So I would ask the students, where's your assignment? Where's your assignment? I submitted it. No, you didn't. And all of these assignments are just loose on my Google Drive, not in any folder. And there's more than 100 of them. And I
So what
finding is what?
So let me, just to be clear here, curious about Cassie's question on Google Earth, by the way, and Matthew, I'll get back, or somebody asked about slides there as well for workbooks and grading. We'll get back to that too, Roger. So yeah, Linda, the first thing is, now I assume that your students have joined your Google Classroom class,
Yes.
right? And then you've made the assignment and you assigned it to them. Right?
Yes, and
But
I
they
sent it through Google Classroom.
Right, as an assignment. So just walking through the steps for other people here, if you don't mind. So basically, you create your assignment for your students, folks, and then you in Google Classroom under the Create tab, under the Classwork tab, the Create button, you create an assignment, and in that, what you can do is attach a document, a Google Doc with a template, like I showed you a moment ago. And then you choose make a copy for every student. And then what that does, it shows them that there is a document for them to work on in there. And then as they work on that document, now you can make a rubric within that assignment and that kind of thing. You can import rubrics that you've already made in Classroom. And then they have to work on that document and submit, turn in. Now they can also upload materials. So if they've worked on a Google Doc outside in of their classroom, then they can upload that as other material, but they still have to click turn in. So if they haven't clicked turn in, then you don't get it as a teacher. So my only recommendation is you walk them through that again and say, I'm not grading your stuff unless you turn it in this way. And I want you to practice this with this fake ungraded assignment right now.
Nobody has walked me through that. I have no idea how to do it.
Okay, so you know, this sounds like an OTJ moment, right? I did a session on Classroom in the summertime, but now that I have students back and we're on Classroom, I could probably walk you through some real world examples, but we could easily walk through that. That's great. Or through my training account, I could make you a student and you can see what it looks like for a student, and that gives you that empathetic perspective, right? So we can do that. Write that down, Jose.
Okay. I love how we now have.
Jenny's not here to be your secretary.
Yeah, I'm Nate's secretary tonight. But I do notice that, and I do love that we now have the word an OTJ moment, and nobody flinched thinking, I don't know what that means. We all know what that means now.
That's great.
That's an OTJ moment. Nate, sorry, were you going to follow up, because we have a few other questions that are lined up too?
Sure. Yeah. Just curious. What was Cassie's question about Google Earth? I'm on a team of 70 people worldwide, and
the question was simply, what is Google Earth? But there's Cassie right there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if anyone had more questions about what you're doing right now, maybe it's better to answer
yours
that
is
first.
just as valid, Cassie. Yours is just as valid.
Cassie, do you think people would be interested?
Thank you.
Not through the summer sessions event, because the schedule is already blocked, but I do Google Earth workshops regularly, and I love talking Google Earth, and it's something I use on a fairly regular basis in my class. I would love to do another session on Earth. In fact, I just did one for a school in California about a week ago, and
we have hours free on Thursday, and an hour free, but in the middle of the day, listen, if you talk to me, I can slap you right in there.
I'm not sure I can attend, but
I've got 5 workshops. I'm doing 3 webinars for schools in California.
It'll be recorded.
Yeah.
It's Saturday next month or so.
Yeah, let's put that for
all
later. Yeah, I've got an insane week going on here.
You had a nice, Nate, you had a nice intro to Google Earth, though. You have a nice example. Maybe you posted that. They could see what you can do, and that would be kind of a nice start.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
So what I've got on my website, I'll throw this in the thing here. If you if you were to go to, thanks Steve for that that plug. I've got a Google Earth tab in my my website, and the video in the very top right is a tutorial on how you can build a project. It's not about everything in Google Earth, it's only about Google Earth projects, and that's what that tab's about. But the reason projects I went with first is that you can collaborate, you can have students working together to create your own Google Earth tours where they're bouncing around the world. So those examples are, you know, what you can build. The Christmas one is the particular one that got featured on the Google Earth Education resources page. And it's not difficult, very intuitive.
Okay, next one
is.
Did you say Christmas?
Yeah, like the story
Okay.
of Christmas. No,
I'll check out that link.
Yeah, it's about Christmas. It's the history of Christmas, right? I did quite a lot of research on it, and yeah, I had fun doing it. I'm going to pull up something. There was another question. You're welcome. No, thanks for the question. Yay, people who want to know more about Earth.
Okay, so we have the next question is from Adam.
Yeah, I was just noticing before when you were talking about sharing the copy link with all of the students and things, and you could actually put it to share with anyone who has the link.
Yep.
Do these Google Suite tools, do any of them have LTI capability?
LTI.
Learning tools interoperability. It becomes a tool provider to a different LMS or something and pass grades back to that home LMS.
I don't believe so. Our learning management system right now, it's called iSAMS, and it doesn't actually integrate well with Google. So like if I create my gradebook in Sheets, I've actually got to look at the final grades and then put them into, you know, our reporting from now it's going to go into iSAMS. We're an international baccalaureate school, so, you know, before we did everything in ManageBac, but now we're going to Classroom. So there's going to be an extra step, and I'm just bracing myself for the complaining. But anyway, so it depends. Now, Google does link up, like when I was talking earlier about Pear Deck as an add-on, you know, you have these third-party developers that create more functionality for, you know, some of the G Suite. It's actually G Suite. Sometimes people say G Suites and all that kind of stuff. It used to be called GAF, Google Apps for Education. They changed it a few years ago. Google's always changing things and driving people like me crazy. But G Suite for Education apps, it just depends on who their partner company is. If it's a tech company, they might have integration. You know, like Padlet has integration, but in terms of the integration with their gradebooks, I'm not sure. Edpuzzle, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, so I think that kind of answers your question. It really depends on the tool.
And there might be something on the horizon if I check back here later, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nearpod has slides integration. That's right. One thing I want to show, there was a person who had a question earlier about workbooks. They were like, you know, what about, I think it was Roger, if I remember, right? Roger said, do you know much about using slides as workbooks and scoring or grading? Last week, I was moderating a session for a school in Providence, Rhode Island. And the person was doing a session on Slides Mania. And I didn't realize that Slides Mania, I'm going to paste the link. Slides Mania has a lot of free templates for slide decks and things, but I'm going to share my screen again to show you something incredibly useful, simply because of the workbook feature. So if you go up to, education, you've got manipulatives, choice boards and games, notebook style, weekly planners, yearly planners. These are all things with templates that you can download. So I'm here in notebook style, right? And so if you go through the person, I think it's a woman in Spain that actually created this. You know what I'm noticing? You know, talking about the summer sessions, remember we talked about more inclusion and diversity in that? Some of the best ideas coming out of Google from people who don't work in Google are actually women, like, you know, Google educator groups. I mean, well, she worked for Google, actually, that's a bad example. But somebody in Spain, she came up with this, and she's got all these free templates that you can download. And it's for slide presentations. She's got activities like Venn diagrams where you use the master slides within Google Slides where kids only have one space that they're allowed to edit. So she's got examples in here somewhere, like a notebook or a handbook, right? Here, free digital notebooks. So if you tap on this, and I hope this is an example of you know, that helps answer your question, at least in part. Let's see. So now this is what I think is totally cool. All right. So I'm not going to download it. I'm going to open it in Slides. But here's an example. You can do it in PowerPoint as well if you're a Microsoft school, right? So This, you can make a copy just by clicking use template. But if you were to look at this, like, look at this. Now in Google Slides, you can do the portrait version, right? And what she's done is creating all these different, all right? So if I tap, you know, like she's creating a workbook for your students, right? So you can download the template, you can add to it. The students can't change any of these because they are locked elements, right? And so if you want to save time and just do your own thing, so let's go, okay, we're on topic F, everybody. So you download it, you change this to topic F, and all you have to do is, you know, add in the next slide, whatever text you want to go here. And then you can put in like your own space for students to work and add their own ideas kind of thing, right? So I'm not going to show you other ones. She's got like a million in here. Slides Mania is quite popular around the world. You see it at educational technology conferences all the time. Highly recommend it. I like kind of making my own simple things, so I honestly don't use it a lot, but when I'm thinking like, I'm getting boring, let me do something.
No, actually, that's awesome. Thanks. The reason why I brought that up is because I'm actually presenting on Wednesday on using PowerPoint for listening activities, similar as a workbook.
Mm-hmm.
But I got the idea by going to YouTube and seeing these elementary school teachers, like you said, all of them are women pretty much, and they make these amazing books using slides. And I had no idea you could do that, and that's where I got the idea from. I just used it with PowerPoint and the OneDrive. But it's if you go to YouTube, they're just amazing. Like how they can make the book look just like a normal book, and then they would have it to where that they had a rubric and they could easily score it on Google Classroom. So that's why I was asking.
Yep. There's a you know, and that's the thing that I have found completely fascinating for the last 12 years or so is the creativity, like HyperDocs. Again, 3 women educators that got together in the United States, and they said, hey, we can make Google Docs look better because they're pretty ugly, right? And they can't do nearly as much as Microsoft Word. But I got the idea from HyperDocs from them. You know what I mean? And the EdTech team based in California, they're a PD company. They said, hey, that's really good. Will you write a book on it? So they wrote a book called the HyperDoc Handbook, which is linked actually in that it's in my website somewhere. But just creative ways to use these tools, right? I mean, I use Google Forms to give kids experience learning how to do how electoral systems work differently in different countries. So I've got one Google form that has the Australian way of doing it, one that's American, first past the post, and that's Google Forms, right? I've got a keyword search that my students do where they're learning about how to do. It's a fun topic, like ancient prehistory and stuff like that. But the skill is finding information using a good keyword search in Google search. But they have fun with it because I've gamified it, right? You can make that as difficult and complex or as simple as you want, right? I just love seeing people come up with these new ideas, and HyperDocs are one. Slides Mania, that's another. There's a lot of good stuff out there.
Okay, Melody, you're up.
Yeah, I was wondering, you showed a workaround for copying files for students. I wanted students to do a peer editing exercise where they would read each other's papers, and I made files for each student, and I assigned each student to read 2 papers, but they had to have editing rights. I didn't realize that till after they started flooding me with emails saying, I can't write any comments on this. What do I do? Is there a workaround for that? Because otherwise I have to type in all their bloody addresses.
There is no workaround. All you can do is, give access to, like each individual, or if you want, what you could do is say, you're going to make the doc, you're going to share it with me. And then what you can do, in fact, instead of them sharing it with you, what I would do is say, you make the doc, you could say share it with me, actually. That way you can ignore the email, but then get them to submit it in a Google form with their name and then a link. And that way you have the name and the link in a spreadsheet. And you can ignore all the Gmail that you get thrown into your, I use tabs in my Gmail. So all that, those updates and stuff like that goes in a different place. So
So but there's no workaround. That's if I was using Google, if I was using Google Classroom, I could do it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. If you're using Google Classroom, what you would have to do though is you go in manually and then share with each individual student, or tell the student that has their docs to share with each other. Because you can't share within Google Classroom, but you and the student have editing rights. So you could go in or just the student.
Oh, okay. See, because what happened was they sent me all their documents. I made up the files on Google Drive, put their stuff in the file,
Yeah.
and then just said, okay, you look for so-and-so's name, and then put your comments. But yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
if you're on Google Classroom, the easiest, Classroom is so easy because when somebody joins a class, they automatically have a folder for your class made in a folder called Classroom. Everybody just gets this. I mean, I'm saying this because there might be a few people that don't know this. I'm not
So
sure
each
how many-
student gets their own folder.
Each student. So
If they're
what
in my
happens-
class.
Yep.
So they could put their document in their folder and then give their access to another
Yep.
student.
I'll tell you what, why don't I show? I'll have to open my school account. It could cross over poorly, but let me open my school account here. We just went to Google Class. I used to use Classroom in my last school, and I'm so happy we're going to Classroom in this school now. It's been driving me nuts not having it. But I want to walk people through what it looks like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Let me just kind of.
I'm using all the other tools. I might as well use it.
Oh, if you have access to Classroom, just use it. Now, this isn't super developed because we just literally had our first day of classes today, but I did get one class set up with Classroom. All the assemblies, not only actually had one class today. So I'm going to share my screen here. I almost clicked leave.
Okay, while Nate's sharing his screen, I just want to tell everyone it is actually past our end time, which was supposed to be at 8:30. But if Nate is actually willing to be so generous, we can continue if everybody.
Yeah, no, I love this stuff. It's great. Thanks again for having me and for the interest, everybody. I love this stuff. I think it's fun. So
we're going to keep going, and we got a bunch of questions too, Nate. So maybe keep that in mind as we're answering.
Oh, this will be quick. So basically, all right. So I go here. I'm actually very quickly. I'll open up Classroom. Just to kind of show you, you're gonna laugh when you see this because I'm a head of department, so I get access to everybody's classroom. Wait for that to load. So these are all the different classes here. You would not have this many, but so my DP History 12 class here, right? You can see I've got 8 students. I have a few that are absent, a couple stuck overseas, so it is a bigger class. But so this is essentially how it works. All right. So I tap on my Classroom. Now, here is my stream. Okay. Actually, I should just quickly kind of go back and tap on that. Whoops. Now I've tapped on classwork. You notice here it says I've got my class drive folder. I can tap on that. And now I'm going to show you a few different ways to do this. This is just one way. I tap on that. And then now I can see the folder, right? So if you look at the breadcrumbs at the top here, right? I've got my drive, Classroom, like Google automatically makes this for you.
Yeah.
And whatever the name of my course, let's say you call your course English Literature A, right? It's automatically going to generate this. This is exactly the same as this Classroom name, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so in here, I haven't given any assignments, but what you're going to see pop up is Aiko, Emily, Kohei, Desi, the names of my students. They will have all their own folders.
Okay.
And then they're going to have documents and folders within the folders as I assign stuff to them.
Okay, so you invite them to join.
Yes, and you do that by when you're in your stream, right? You could invite them through email. Here's a nice thing too, right? You can see my students are already here, right? I can get co-teachers in here, so I've got a bunch of co-teachers on here.
Because I get all the students' email addresses.
I got to interrupt, Nate. Watch out for those names. We're being recorded, eh?
They are, yes. Thank you. I was aware of that. That's why I was kind of quickly scrolling through there. But
okay, I'm gonna. Okay.
Yeah, our policy is no names and faces, no names and email addresses. So you didn't get that stuff. So,
one thing you have to edit that out. Are you going to show any more names? Otherwise, I'm gonna.
Nope.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yep. And I don't think you need to edit that out though. Those are names, no faces, and email addresses. Or if there was an email address in there, yeah.
So names are okay then. Names are okay.
Names are okay.
Okay.
Yep. Just no faces connected.
So
let me quickly just show this here. If you're teaching remotely, everybody, okay, now you can either project this in class if you're face-to-face, but if you're teaching remotely, you just got to tap on that button, and then the students go to Google Classroom, they tap join class, and then they join your class, right? But anyway, we won't get into a Google Classroom thing here, but basically, one last way that you can see their work after the classroom is made is simply to go to your apps launcher, go to Google Drive, and then like I said, Google has automatically created a folder. I've got a million folders here, but it is automatically made. Come on, load, will you? So they've got a folder here. You can see classroom right there. So if I tap on that, I've only got one class set up because I only saw one class today. And so you're going to see that's my only class in here. But okay, well, okay. The reason why you're seeing all of these is other teachers got their classes set up. And so now their folders were automatically generated. So anyway, in each of these individual classes, you're going to see student work and that kind of thing. So I can see a lot of teachers actually in my department, they were all using Classroom today because these weren't here yesterday. So that's how it kind of works.
Okay.
Okay.
And I just realized because I'm a
great.
department head, that's going to drive me nuts.
Okay, just so people don't get antsy about whether or not they're going to come up in the listing of questions. Next we have Linda, then we have a request from Alex, and then we have a question from Cassie. So Linda, you're up.
Hi, I've got another beginner question probably.
That's great.
I've used other grading software that tabulated my grades as I go, and I could just put in A, B, C, and I say that A is this and B is that and C is that. And depending on the points, if it's 50 points or 100 points or 20 points or 10 points, the software GradeKeeper would calculate that for me. Does Google Classroom do that?
Yeah, you put you choose your weightings and your grades, and so your weightings might be like, you know, you have a rubric that's, you know, an A grade is this, and so quizzes could be 10%, you know, major. I tend to go like quiz, major assignment, minor assignment, and that way.
And you have categories like tests and homework and attendance.
Those are the categories that I use, and then you can have them where it's a Google form quiz where they either get it right or wrong if you've built it. You can go back in and change all these grades anyway. You can put a rubric in for any of your categories, any of your assignments. You know, if you want to do like for me, what I'm doing from this year with my students is an engagement category. And so the engagement is when I give them, like, let's say I give them a slide deck and I want them to work on one slide, then, you know, I'll make that an assignment. I make it engagement, and it might be worth only like, you know, 3 points, right? All my engagement things are 3 points, and it's either you really showed high engagement, you showed some engagement, or no engagement. You know, like I'm going to give everybody at least one, right? I mean, you were in the class, right? You opened it up, you know, you typed a sentence. IB schools are kind of weird that way, but anyway, you can do that, and then the weighting goes in there. And for me, you know, that might only be 10% of the grade, but I might do that like 50 times over the course of the year. Okay, you got 10 minutes, go, you know?
We have an attitude category at my school, and that's basically engagement. I like engagement better. But that's 40% of the final grade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
But that's great.
Yeah.
That's great, because we want students to be engaged in class, right? You know, that's where the real learning happens, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not where you know what I mean, right? I mean, that's where we're working together kind of deal. That time is important, and we should assess it, you know?
But it's also very
Adam.
unaccessible. You know, how do students know
Thanks,
how
Matthew.
they're doing? I can use it at the end of the semester if a student has a little bit higher grade or lower grade than I think they deserve. I can adjust the attitude part so that they get the grade I feel they deserve.
Well, that's what I did, because we weren't using Google Classroom. I did have a paper-based portfolio that the students used. And I told them, I said, listen, when at the end of the day, I have to choose, are you going to get this or are you going to get that? Like, you know, you have to round up or round down, right? And when I see that, let's say you get like 88, you're 2 points away from 90. As a professional, it's my professional judgment to say, hold on, you know, hey, they had 88 on that, but you gave them 90. And I can say to my principal, hold on a second here. Look at the work that this student did for the whole course of the year. You telling me I can't give 2 points for this? And so now it's just going to be more digital, right? So I'm with you, Linda, 100%.
I had one student who got a 79, and I just couldn't look at her grades and think she deserves an 80. So she got a 79.
Yep. Well, and that's it too. I've had students in the past too. It's like, I got 79, and I'm like, yeah. Why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Linda, did you want to follow up?
No, go ahead. No.
Okay. Alex had a request. Alex, do you want me to convey the request or do you want to ask it directly?
Bill's comments are great.
Yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday I did a 3-hour workshop, 3-hour webinar on neurodiversity and learning, which quite a lot of people here attended, which was really nice of you. Thank you very much. But I realized that I couldn't, I wanted to show a whole lot of slides of images, but I wanted to be able to zoom right in to show tiny differences and things. And when I've done this in, I was doing a keynote for it, and then I just thought, hang on, when I do a keynote, the minute I touch the slide, it's going to freeze, it's going to go back to edit mode. And I'm not going to be able to do that as quickly as I'd like to. So I ended up throwing everything into albums on, and then whenever I want to show photographs, I just
Alex, hang on a
switch
second.
over, jump over to sharing the iPad. And what's the option?
Alex, could you repeat that last maybe 30 seconds of your question again, please?
What's the issue? What do you mean?
Yeah, so
is it like, can you zoom?
Is there something that I could use other than just a photo album to be able to zoom in and zoom out on individual pictures?
When you're
because the problem with I couldn't put them in any kind of I couldn't move them. They just drop into an album, and I couldn't rearrange the sequence. So I had to keep jumping around. Is there anything in Google that I could put pictures into?
That's a good question. Google has Google Photos, but basically you're creating a rotating slideshow, or you would have to tap from photo to photo and blow them up, kind of thing.
You can't just touch them and sort of drag them around the screen.
Well, dragging around the screen, no. I mean, if you're going from your iPad, you should be able to tap one image. It'll, pop up as the main image, and then you tap and it comes out, and then you choose a different image, so you can navigate that way.
Yeah.
But in terms of manipulating and twisting around,
No,
I
I just wanted to drag them and move them, and I couldn't. I couldn't find a solution.
I think one thing that might have made, if I can pretend to read your mind, Alex, she saw you actually enlarging and shrinking your screen, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
How did you do that on your browser?
Okay, well, first off, when I was doing that, it wasn't my, I wasn't in a slides presentation. When you do a slides presentation, I honestly don't know about Keynote and PowerPoint, but in Google Slides, as soon as you tap your slide, whether you're on an iPad or your trackpad, it's going to go to the next slide, right?
Yeah.
You can't, but on my Mac, all I'm doing is pinching my finger, like I put my mouse in the area that I want to zoom in on. You notice that I'm not really good at placing it, but I put my mouse over there and I zoom in with my 2 fingers and then zoom out, exactly like Jose's doing.
Oh, you mean on?
Yep, on your trackpad.
Okay.
So just, your finger and your thumb and just, and then it zooms in. I do that a lot with my tutorial videos.
That was on Google Slides. You were doing that on Google Slides, right?
No, I wasn't on Slides, and that's my point. You can't do that on Slides. As soon as you tap your, even with 2 fingers, it's going to go to your next slide, right?
And where were you when you were doing that just now?
I was in a website, so I was in a browser.
Oh, okay.
Can I suggest something? Just make a new slide. Insert a new slide. You have your big slide. Insert a second slide with the zoomed in part. And then the third slide is the first slide again duplicated, so that you can just zoom in and zoom out.
Yeah, like you have the transitions, right? Put the 3 pictures on the same slide and then put the transitions. So one pops up, then it zooms in, and then it goes back, right? Yeah, that's a good idea.
I know how to do those, but I was trying to be really responsive to the things that people seem to be interested in.
Right.
Yeah.
And, to dive in on those examples, and I simply couldn't predict, okay, where are they going to go? And I wanted to be able to just do it. So I ended up sort of hunting and pecking through a bunch of photos in an album. Yes.
Yeah. So what you could do then is actually just put them in like Google Photos or whatever your album is. And with Google Photos, I just quickly scroll, and then you can tap on one image and then, click the back arrow, tap on another. That's what I would do in that situation.
I'll stick with that for tomorrow night. I mean, Wednesday night? Wednesday night.
Wednesday night. Yep.
All right.
Cool. Alex is going to give us another great presentation on Wednesday night from 8 to 10. Cassie, are you there? And while we're waiting for Cassie.
Hi, I already typed my comment. It was like a while ago. It was about the student emails. So I use Google Forms to collect them all and just copy paste them all.
Yep,
yeah.
that's the fastest way to do it, right? If you don't from your IT administrator get a spreadsheet with contact info, our LMS, we can just download all that stuff. So that's where I get my thing, but it's really handy for, contacting parents and, welcome to NIS. And this year I'm going to be your INS teacher, for your child, kind of thing. But if you don't have that, then yeah, Google Form is the way to go. Totally, Cassie. Yep.
I want to remind everyone too, there's another Google-centered, Nate-centered, Google-centered presentation on Thursday, this time on the theme of student voice and how to promote that. And again, Nate will be presenting it. It'll be from 7 to 8:30. We're not done yet here. I just wanted to remember to say that before I, like a goofball, usually forget these important announcements.
Yeah, but actually that's not going to be quite Google centered. We're going to look at a number of different things like podcasting, TED. We're not going to talk about how to give a good presentation, but, TED Ed student talks kind of thing. And, and other student voice apps kind of thing. But yeah, we'll throw Google in there as well.
Oh, there you go.
But there's a range of things. So
next question, open floor. I don't think there's many people here, so feel free to open up your mic to ask your question. Anybody? Not at all.
Yeah, and Joe's got MacBook Command Plus. I find that doesn't work with slides, but that zooming in bit. But some good comments in here, folks. Solutions, right?
I have a really basic question. I think I asked it on OTJ. Is there any way to adjust an email that a student has entered incorrectly in a Google form?
Well,
So
you
that
have to.
I
you
can't
have to
reset them because they've done it wrong.
Well, okay, so if the student, there's two things. I mean, if your form is set up so that they can respond multiple times, you could tell them just to do it again and get the one at the bottom of the spreadsheet, because Google Forms, as you know, creates the spreadsheet. So if you tap on the spreadsheet, you could just get them to, send it to you again, and they can change the spreadsheet. That's probably the only way or the fastest way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, get all the kids, students to put it in a Google form, and then somebody who makes a mistake is like, hey, my email address, right? Here it is, just mail it to me. So you don't get 500 emails, right? Just the students that made the mistake.
Okay.
Okay, Bill, you're up.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, yeah, I have a question about Google Forms or Google Quizzes. Is there any way that we can verify the input so that it's like for example, students put in Japanese apostrophes and you want to say, okay, no, you have to put it in. It all has to be English.
Oh, wow.
So I know they have like number verification.
Well, they've got like, must match, like they've got a feature in there where the answer has to be a very exact response, kind of thing. I think you did that in your session, maybe even in the spring. I can't remember, but in terms of like not recognizing a language, I've never seen that. It's another question I could ask, but I haven't seen that unless you went into, again, that, what's it specifically called? But when you're building your question, you can go in and force the response, right? It's got to be exact.
Required question, required answer.
No, it's there's a difference. There's kind of a, yeah, it's not. I can't remember exactly what it's called. It's not required answer, but anyway, there's it's oh geez, you're gonna.
Do you mean like if you say it has to be a number, or
it's a pattern? Actually, a pattern response, I think, is what it's called. But it's got to be a specific word. Uppercase, lowercase has to be the same thing. If it's not that, then, or a specific number, then, or the answer must be a number. If it's none of that, then they can type whatever they want. They could answer in Japanese, even though it's in English. There's nothing you can do about that. I honestly, I've never seen it, and I highly doubt it. These apps aren't really that advanced, right? Forms could be a lot better in my mind. I'm sure the minds of many.
Floor still
Thanks,
open.
Catherine.
Nope. Shall we sing some campfire songs? Nope.
Response validation. Thank you, Steve. That's it.
There it
Response
is.
validation.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, Steve went into Forms and he was checking. Thank you.
That's right. See, now this is what This is what a moose is all about. It's just an entire team effort to create knowledge.
No, I just happened to know. I just happened to know, and I looked.
No, but that's it. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many terms and words, right? I mean, that's, I wasn't going to go looking in forms again, right? What's that word again?
Did somebody say campfire songs?
Hey, Todd.
But Jose,
On my guitar. No,
Jose, you made the real point though. Like, I mean, this has been one of the more engaging sessions that I've done. I've been doing a lot of things with schools in America for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I said earlier. And, sometimes you get crickets, sometimes you get a lot of questions. I had like 85 social studies teachers in California, and it was such a fun session because the questions were coming. This has been a fun session because there's a reason to discuss things, right? It's so thank you, everyone. I mean, this has been 2 hours of my time well spent, as far as I'm concerned.
2 hours of everyone's time well spent, I think. And
I hope so.
I speak for everyone when, I don't know if we're shutting down or not, but to be able to just get it over with, we're on that theme. Thank you to Nate. So if everyone wants to open up their microphones to give out a round of applause, open up your mics, and we're going to give Nate a round of applause. Hey.
Thank you. Thank you. And around for you, engaged educators.
Yep.
Thank you.
I wish everybody in my department was like that. No, they are. They're good. They're good.
We're still here. But,
the recording.
No, I'm kidding. They're good. No, my department's
I'm
fabulous.
going to kill the recording now. So